Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my illustrious co-hosts, Matt Scott and Ashley Giordano. So thank you all for being here because we're going to talk about the Rebelle Rally, which is, I think, one of the coolest events that we have in North America. I think it's one of the coolest events on the planet, and it has been so successful because of a lot of reasons that we're going to talk about today. But Matt and Ashley were just there.
We were there, actually,
about a week ago, and you both had different roles. So maybe start off by telling the listener what you guys were both doing there at the event.
Why don't you start? Because mine was fluid.
Okay, so I was social media manager, and so I captured the essence of what was going on the ground and posted so the fans back home could see.
So you were doing active posting during the whole event.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you were the one that was keeping us all up to date. I love that.
Yeah, it was great. And I guess I was internal media. So that was pretty cool to be on the other side of the event and see it from the inside out, which is cool. That's my third year as part of the internal media team there.
And were you involved with the event before that?
I was not.
In a different capacity, or you've only worked in the internal media side?
Yes, correct.
And how did you get connected with Emily Miller and the whole...
I don't really remember exactly how I had this idea that I wanted to help out, but I just sent Emily an email one day asking if I could volunteer, and she said yes. So I was pretty stoked about that. And then we worked at King of the Hammers together, and she got down on one knee and proposed to me and asked if I could help with the social media at the next year's Rebelle Rally. So
that's awesome.
It was great. She's wonderful.
Yes. Well, and we can't talk about the Rebelle Rally without talking about Emily Miller, because she is one of the most professional and accomplished event organizers in the country. And she's also a very accomplished racer and driver in her own right. And if I recall correctly, she started off by participating and racing in the Trophy Aisha des Gazelles that's conducted in Morocco. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think
she did some desert
that,
racing.
Yeah,
she
did.
was mentored by Rod Hall, who's a really, really close friend of hers. So I think she did a lot of score stuff, and Nora.
Yep.
I don't know the classes because there's like a new class every week.
They're super.
But I know she did one of them.
Yeah.
And had quite a bit of success on that, and then definitely went on to the Rally Aisha des Gazelles. And then, I'm just glad that she brought kind of that similar format of the navigation rally. So, I mean, I guess let's back up and let's talk about what the Rebelle Rally is. So, first off, it's the longest off-road rally. Don't say race, it's a rally, in the United States, which is incredibly impressive. The course this year was 2,200 kilometers.
Wow.
Of which I would say 90% of that would have been dirt.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some areas. The course this year started actually at Hoover Dam, so that's where tech inspection was. So that was really cool to be able to, hang out at Hoover Dam all day. And then did tech inspection. Damn. There's a lot of damn jokes. But then the next
totally
day,
damn
they
inappropriate
left
there.
from Lake Las Vegas. That's kind of the hotel. That was like the host hotel. And there's prologue stage, which went up kind of by Area 51. So it kind of did like a loop of southern Nevada.
No abductions in Area 51 that you're aware of?
No. I did
Any
stop
unaccounted for
I did stop at
teams?
the Little Ailey Inn.
I saw the Earth Rower parked there, and I was like, "What is happening there?"
Yeah. So it was like this really kooky dive bar. They have basically an alien burger that is served on a hoagie, which is, if you're a fan of dive bar cheeseburgers and those really cheap pickles, it
was on point.
It was on point. Some kooks working there for sure. But anyway, so
no loss of time for you?
No
Matt?
loss of time.
Okay, got it.
Except for that one thing. So first base camp, basically they kind of, most of the base camps you're at for 2 nights, and you'd transit to the base camp and then do a loop from that base camp and then transit to the next base camp.
Cool.
So, the first base camp for stage 1 and 2
Yes, stage 1 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like
2 nights.
2 nights, yeah. So it started from there. It was maybe 45 minutes north of Rachel, which is on the extraterrestrial highway, which was it was an interesting area. Like it was super pretty.
Is that where the storm came in, or was that later?
No, that was in the
later.
Amargosa Valley.
Oh, we got to
we'll
talk
get
about that.
We'll
Yeah,
get
cool.
to the storm that
Looked
affected
fantastic.
Others maybe more than it did me in the earthquake. I felt really bad.
No, you didn't.
Sort of.
No, you didn't.
I shared it with my friends.
But there was a ranch at that.
Yeah, there's a ranch.
The first base camp as well, which
And
was cool.
they've been
Nice.
ranching there as a family since the 1800s.
Amazing.
Which was really cool. So that one was on private property. A lot of the events on BLM land, because there's just so much BLM land.
Especially in Nevada, everywhere.
The event has such a great relationship with the land managers, and I think, that's kind of one of the themes I see is I don't necessarily want to call it conservation, but it's an incredibly healthy respect for the land, for the agencies that allow an event like this to happen.
What do you think they do different to help maintain
less
that
energy
relationship?
drink sponsors?
Got it. Maybe just less energy drink being consumed in general.
No, I think one, it's a different style of competition. It's not let's see how fast we can go. So it's limited to 50 mile an hour, which let's approach the elephant in the room here is certain types of men love to hate this event.
Yeah.
Whether they're jealous or insecure or too stupid to read a map.
Or entitled or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a navigation rally. So what you're trying to do is you're given a map and a compass the day, day one, your phones, devices, cameras that aren't even allowed that have little GPS functionality and things like that.
Oh, sure.
They wrap them up, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
they wrap them up. They
Duct
cover
tape or
screen.
something.
Like if your car has like a navigation screen that's all like kind of taped
Taped
up
up.
and covered.
Cool.
And I don't know what the term for it is. Put in quarantine. Although
Yes.
that has a different meaning after the last year or two.
So anything that has the capability of providing navigational
Yeah,
assistance.
you get a map and a compass.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah, so you're navigating from checkpoint. There's 3 types of checkpoints. There's green, blue, and black. So green checkpoints are staffed. So everyone has to go through the green checkpoints. And that kind of gives you your base level of points. If you complete just the green checkpoints each day, that means you've completed the route for the day.
Sure.
If you can, and then on top of that, you have blue checkpoints, which are harder to find than greens, but not as hard as black checkpoints. So they have a small little flag that, the competitors basically get a.
There's a hole punch or
there's
something.
No, it's actually like a GPS
Oh, it's
tracker.
a tracker.
And
Okay.
then they're based, they're judged on how close they were to that point, and where it becomes really challenging and what separates, the winners from those who don't, those who are competing and those who are, there's a lot of people I think respectfully that just go on the Rebelle to
Have an
a
adventure.
great experience
Sure.
and a great adventure. Are these black checkpoints? They're generally in technical terrain.
No flag.
There's no flag.
Marked.
So you have to, with map, compass, dead reckoning, and however you're doing this,
Wow.
you have to find these places that are in the desert, and it's set up to where you can't just get everything. So there's a strategy. Like I'm going to try and get, checkpoint 16, 19, 21, and 27 because that's a route. And there's no way that you could get back to checkpoint 15 and whatever numbers that I didn't say.
And then the checkpoints, every team's not necessarily going to the same ones. They have different ones that they've been, I guess, assigned.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
interesting.
You can't follow another team because that might not be your checkpoint.
So it's a way to
yeah.
kind of prevent people hedging by following maybe a
Right.
team that has a great reputation for navigation or
Yes.
something
That
like
was
that.
my idea, was
Yeah.
just follow Nina.
Exactly.
But an easy way to remember, like ski hills, you have your
Yeah.
green, blue, black.
Yeah. So
So the black points are not only more difficult terrain wise, but then they're also not, you don't know that you've actually made it.
you don't know
So
until
then what do? You push a button to say,
push a button and then tracker. So all
Okay.
all of the cars have, there's also some safety stuff that goes in. you know, when you're taking people's cell phones or locking people's cell phones away, you know, there are mechanics on the event that can come and help you. So, you know, there was a Porsche that like totally destroyed an axle shaft and CV joint and stuff. So there's actually a satellite phone in the car.
Okay.
This satellite phone is, you know, emergency only. And
Sure.
there's also a vehicle tracker. So like when you're staff, you can actually go on and well, actually anybody can go online and track during the competition live scoring and where the competitors are throughout the event.
That's impressive.
It's actually pretty technical. A lot of this stuff comes from like sailing races, yachting, and that kind of stuff.
Well, that makes sense. If someone was to have a rollover and maybe they're unconscious or maybe the vehicle caught on fire and they needed to get out, they would see that like the signal has dropped. This was the last known location, or the vehicle hasn't moved in 2 hours or whatever. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
And comms, like all the staff, most of the staff, they have comms. So obviously the medical lab there.
yeah, all
Sure.
the
Way to
Radium
chat.
push to talk satellite communications this year, which was really, really cool. But
So cool.
yeah, but it's just a fantastic race. This year was 8
Rally, Matt, rally.
Sorry, Emily.
It's not a race
Matt
for
likes
speed.
to go fast.
You know, yeah. It's a wonderful event. Yeah, try criticizing that one. It's a wonderful event. I want to say this year was 8 stages,
Yeah,
right?
I believe, yeah.
8 stages.
And are any
Yeah.
of the stages like a special task where, like something you'd see in the Camel Trophy, where they need to build a bridge, or they're all some version of a driving
all
event?
pretty full on. You know, there's 2,200 kilometers of, you know, primarily dirt that's covered. And, you know, as I was saying earlier with the route, you know, it went up extraterrestrial highway, kind of over towards Tonopah and then down towards Death Valley. This year, they actually were the first competition that ever got permission to do Titus Canyon.
Oh, sure. That's cool through there. Beautiful.
So that was super, super special.
That's
And
beautiful
I think
through
that
there.
just goes to say, you know, how much work and how much respect the event, you know, does have for those lands. But yeah, that is where things got.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was like 65-mile-an-hour winds, and we were camped.
The
by
photos were
dunes on
awesome.
Sickbed. If you haven't seen them,
It's so great.
like I think I posted some stuff on Overland Journal. I know there's stuff on the Rebelle Rally
Yes.
Instagram page. It was apocalyptic. I mean, I also had my TRX there that I loaned to Chris Walker for he was driving media around. I had to get in that thing and go like 3 miles down the valley to find what are those silver tents called?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. The space pod, the pod,
Shift
something
pod.
shift pod. Yeah.
A shift
Yes.
pod, like, you know, they look like alien spacecraft, and this time you're on the other side of Area 51, and then you just kind of like in this whiteout, you see this silvery thing just kind of like take off, and you're like, okay, you know.
So it like exited the whole
Yeah.
area.
It exited. It was found miles away.
Oh, wow.
Rochelle Croft's belongings were still inside of it when
Oh,
they
wow.
found it,
Oh,
like
wow.
miles and miles away, all
Oh, wow.
intact. So she was pretty happy to get all of her stuff back unharmed.
That's hilarious. So
Yeah.
another question that comes to mind, you mentioned the 50 miles an hour. Since it's a rally, do they actually deduct points if you go over that 50 mile an hour?
Yeah, and that was a problem this year. Like on the first, was the first day, right?
At first or second day, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's all a
First or
blur now,
second
to be
day.
honest, but
Some
yeah.
people were, you know, you'd look down on the tracker and people were doing like, you know, 70 mile an hour.
Sure.
And, you know, you have to put it into context. You know, again, people will kind of criticize the event for this 50 mile an hour speed limit.
These are public lands.
These are public lands,
Open roads.
in stock vehicles
Yeah.
without roll cages. Like,
Sure.
I mean, like,
It has to be
I
that.
was struggling to do 50 in my TRX.
Sure.
That's 700 horsepower.
Sure.
With all of the travel.
Yeah.
You know, a lot. This is everything from us. There was a stock Subaru Crosstrek this year.
Sure.
You know, I think it's less. This event is less about what you put in the vehicle and how you modify it and how much money you spend. There's less ego in the vehicle, and the ego is in the competitor, and it's in the skills of that.
Yeah, the driver and the navigator, sure.
It's
strategy.
I love that.
Strategy's super important.
yeah, but
I love that.
You couldn't drive 50 on a lot of these roads. A lot of them are really technical. They're not just like open flat desert stuff. I mean, although there is parts of that.
And you helped monitor the on-time enduro.
I did 2 of the on-time enduros where they have to average a certain amount of speed.
Oh yeah,
between
yeah.
two
That's
things.
really difficult.
It's really, really difficult. And the interesting thing was how close people actually were, which gave you a clue in as to the talent of these women. I want to say the one that I did, they had to finish it within 17 minutes, and there was like a 2-minute interval, and like most of them came in like within seconds.
And is there a rally computer on board
That
gives them average speeds?
Road book?
They have
Is that where they get it?
TerraTrips, okay, yeah. So that helps.
TerraTrips, and some of them have ICOs, but
what really can set it off is wheel spin or take, instead of taking like the center of the route, that they cut all the apexes, or maybe they blow some corners, and it adds time and distance.
There were some people blowing corners on mine. I had somebody like almost roll into my earth roamer that was parked behind the turn.
Yeah.
I think that was the day that.
That was the day. I was like, that was probably the day.
Yeah.
There was a little chat at base camp about
Yeah.
that, but
Emily was not super happy.
But it makes sense as the event gets more and more popular, and there's more and more at stake. Some people are now sponsored, and there's big OEM involvement. So it's going to make sense that
7
there's
OEMs involved this year,
which I think is the coolest part. I mean, it's just to see so much support at every single level, from Matt, you being there with Max Tracks, to Volkswagen,
Rivian, Ford, Jeep, Kia, Nissan, Porsche.
I mean, these are big.
Mitsubishi, Honda,
Toyota.
And 50, I think it was 50%, almost 50% of the teams were rookies this year, which is a lot.
And some of them did really good. The Toyota engineers.
Yep.
So what's the story on the Toyota engineers?
I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Oh, they just rocked it.
Like they were both Toyota engineers, product engineers.
Sequoia.
Yeah, in the Shikoya. It was like Team Shikoya.
What a great name.
Yeah, so they won the Rookie of the Year award, and they just placed really, really well and did a great job for the first year. So.
And was the vehicle totally stock, or like a TRD? It was probably a TRD
It was a
version.
TRD version of the Sequoia. It sounded great.
The 5.7, sure.
It was throaty. I think it was pretty much stock.
Yeah.
It definitely didn't have that much done to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what stood out in your mind of what they did different or better than the other rookies?
I think that the top teams, the thing that I saw, Elizabeth Williams and her sister, friends of Scott and I, I think they were the second highest scoring team. And the thing that I saw between those two teams was they were really, really comfortable, and they had great communication with their co-driver and their navigator or the driver, vice versa. Because this is maybe a little controversial. On the Rebelle, it's like, I think the driver's kind of an Uber driver. You're being told where to go by the navigator.
Sure.
And you have to have that trust, and you have to work together. And if you're not working together, and to a point that the driver has to say, no, this isn't this, they have to have their own common sense. But the navigation's the really, really hard part. So I think the success for teams is mastering the navigation and having trust as a team.
Yeah.
Because if there's no trust, I think
then your driver's second guessing.
There's definitely, people on the event that I talked to that really were struggling, with their teammates, and you could see it.
And that must be a special person that you can spend a week of a time with in a vehicle all day, every day, making strategic
And
decisions.
then sleeping in a tent.
Stressful environment.
Most of them sleep in a tent together.
Right.
Sure.
They can be separate.
They
You can
can
bring
be
your own
separate.
tent, but I think a lot of them, share tents too.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense with Elizabeth being her sister. They've communicated together their whole life, and even if something feels contentious with a sibling, it's usually very brief.
Yeah.
Because it usually isn't like you don't have like the big meltdown. You have like the mini meltdown kind of a thing.
I would just have a meltdown like every 5 minutes. I mean, it is an incredibly challenging event.
I think there were several mother-daughter teams, which
Several.
That
think
is
it's
so
very
cool.
cool.
Second
So
place,
cool.
the Benzies.
Yep.
You know,
So let's talk about the classes. So there is a stock crossover class.
Yeah, it's called X Cross, and
Okay.
that's a I guess that's a class, specific to the Rebelle.
Okay.
So that's everything from a Porsche Cayenne to a Subaru. This year a Ford Bronco Sport won it,
Okay.
and
Who was driving the?
Cora Jonikin was driving, and Melissa Fisher.
Okay.
And then Kia actually sponsored 2 vehicles this year, and I want to say they were like Korean spec PHEVs.
They
Okay.
both were, second and third place.
Yeah, second and third. So
Ina May and Tana White came in second place.
And that's in the PHEV class.
That was in the X-Cross class.
X-Cross class. Okay.
I think the electrified designation is a separate.
So it's a crossover electrified.
It's kind of, there's like an electrified designation,
Okay.
but they
Yeah.
don't compete against each other specifically. They
Okay.
are all competing against each other. So it's like a
Okay.
designation, I guess.
Okay.
yeah, and that's within the 4x4 class. So the bulk of the I'm not going to say the real competition because that's the totally wrong way to say it. The X Cross class is a super huge challenge.
But these are all-wheel drive.
All-wheel
variants.
drive vehicles. I mean, they can have 4-wheel drive. I don't think there's anything that necessarily prohibits them. But there are different routes that the X Cross class is going to take. And the cool thing with X Cross is it just opens it up to more people.
Sure.
If you don't have a 4-wheel drive, and you can just take what's in your driveway. You put some tires and wheels on it. I want to say is pretty much what most people will do, and you go.
Maybe a bash plate or something.
Yeah. There's also within the 4x4 class, which is probably the more contested class, I guess is probably
And
the
what
way
qualifies it as a four-wheel drive? Does it have to have low range?
low range. Although I don't think it has to have low
I think
range.
it's about the transfer case.
Yeah. So probably then low range. I guess I always looked at it as like that's a crossover. It's in the X-Cross class. That's a 4-wheel drive. That's in the 4x4 class.
Sure.
That's where you're seeing Jeeps, FJ Cruisers, pickup trucks,
Tacomas, yeah, sure.
that kind of stuff. I mean, Jeep was the most popular this year.
Definitely.
A Jeep Wrangler?
Yeah, they actually swept first, second, and third in the 4x4 class, which was really cool. And
who won that?
Nina Barlow and Terrelin won
Go
that.
Nina.
Fantastic driver, fantastic 4-wheel drive trainer. Terrelin's an insane navigator. And they actually they actually got the bone stock win. So there's also if the vehicle is completely stock, there's an additional trophy for that.
And
then
wasn't it a PHEV Wrangler?
it was
Yeah.
a 4xe. So first
So
and
cool.
second this year were Wrangler 4xes.
So cool.
Both completely stock. Third place was a. Here's the argument: is third place was a 2021 Wrangler EcoDiesel that had it had bumpers that were factory Mopar bumpers.
Sure.
It had factory Mopar beadlock wheels. It had a factory Mopar lift. So it wasn't necessarily bone stock, but I mean, I guess now you could just go. It essentially mimics the
Recon.
Extreme package. So maybe next year that'll be the one
So
to go
cool.
for. It's
So
been cool to
cool,
see
though.
Jeep
Yeah.
support the event, from the beginning.
Yep.
That's been really cool.
Well, and Nina is a known entity in the industry and a professional and a four-wheel drive trainer, and she manages big events herself. So you can see why pairing her up with the right navigator is that's tough to beat.
I mean, she had a pretty commanding lead this year.
They just went for it. Like on the day that we had that crazy storm, they were still out there in these gales in
I
sand
mean, you couldn't
dunes.
see 20 feet, and she was in the dunes driving, you know.
Trying to use a compass. That's insane. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
And they were getting stuff. So
They were.
you know, again, like so much of this rally comes down to endurance. Like, you know, I guess Emily's thing is that there's a rally within the rally for the staff,
Yes.
and it takes a while to even recover as staff. And I mean,
It does.
yeah.
So
I had a nice bed every night.
how did that feel to you, Ashley, having to keep up with that kind of output on the media side?
Yeah, it's challenging. I think the lack of sleep, that's one of the things that gets you, and working those long days. And it's nice to be able to work with a really good team as well. Like Emily always talks about, she has the best team in the world, which is very flattering. But we each have our own team within the bigger team. So
Sure.
it's all about, like, obviously for my role, I rely on the photographers a lot. And my lead, Kirsten, who is amazing, working with her and the photo manager and all of the different media people to get shots. Even sometimes I'll ask Dan, who he flies the drone, and he has amazing shots to lend me a couple so I can post them on
Some of
social.
those were incredible.
Yeah, he's very talented. So I think we have to think about it like a marathon, not a sprint, and just take one day at a time. And yeah, but it's very rewarding to have, you're like, oh, I got through that as well. But I also looked at the women. After that storm night, they had to go right onto a marathon stage, which means they don't have any like food truck or what else? There was like not very many facilities, I guess, at that next base camp. It was basically like dry camping. And so
Just a
they went
remote
from
camp.
this crazy storm to this super remote camp with 2 days of really long, hard competition. And I was in such admiration of them all because that's so tough.
I was so impressed. I mean, there was not a single complaint that I saw from any of the teams about that. Most of them were like, that was epic. What an amazing adventure. Like there wasn't anything about sand in the sleeping bag. I mean,
Right.
It was just really,
Only from me.
Only for me too. Our tent was like completely, you should see this photo. It's like all of our stuff covered in sand, but
like
it's all good.
the competitors were in it. They were just in it and
And the
making,
positivity in the tent once the tent reopened, because they had to kind of, I mean, it was gnarly. They had to kind of structurally inspect it. The vibes were great. People were excited. I mean, it was either be in the tent or be not in.
Like the main media tent. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
What do you see, Ashley, about that organization now that you've done it for 3 years? Because Emily Miller and her team, they're known for their professionalism and the level of I would say not only professionalism but execution of the event. It's very impressive. It does not feel like a small time event. It feels very professional at a very high level. What are some things that you've noticed, and you too, Matt, but what have you guys noticed about that organization that's different? Like what makes it perform that much better?
She doesn't sleep.
Yeah, she doesn't sleep.
So good. She's great leadership. It sounds like.
But yes,
Incredible leadership.
She really knows how to
yell at people with making them smile, which is something that I took away from that.
Yes. But I love it when Emily gives like her pep talks to both the internal team and also to the teams. She's a leader through and through. I think that's what it is. You can see it.
A lot of competence, a lot of specific knowledge because she's done it herself. And then she really seems to reflect a really high level of leadership for sure.
And she lives and breathes it. You know, they're researching and running those courses all year round.
Yeah.
So she lives, breathes. She's very passionate about it. And
I mean, I think people will critique the cost of the Rebelle. So the Rebelle's $15,000.
But that's why it turns out the way it does.
But you have Drew Deckman, who has one of the hottest restaurants in Mexico. He's in the Guadalupe Valley. Shout out to Drew, doing all the catering. I mean, it's wonderful food. You have showers, you have good showers, bathrooms, base camp. That's awesome. and it's almost a 10-day event by the time, because it's Wednesday, competitors get into Sunday, they leave. You know, and again, I get the Monster Energy flat bill crowd. Oh, there's so much money. I'm like, I know what you spend on Modelo for the 1,000. I know what you spend on tires. I know what you spend on all of this. Like, you can't, unless you've actually done it. Like, I will almost guarantee you, like, this is not a money-making project for Emily Miller. This is a passion project.
Yeah.
You know.
And she deserves to make a living.
Yeah, she deserves.
And
to
so
make
does
a
her
living.
staff.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. She pays people on the event well. She looks after people, but this year I was kind of privy to some like unexpected expenses.
Sure.
You know, that are 5-digit expenses that
like damage from a giant windstorm that you weren't expecting.
a giant windstorm, or like catering went crazy, or this or that, and it's like
sure.
With a event of this magnitude, you're going to have things that are going to come up for sure.
And the level that it's done is unlike anything I've seen. I mean, like Harry Wagner, who does the press releases and the automotive journalist, he's been on, he's done pretty much everything. He's done Dakar. He's done, the
Score, Nora, all of it. Yeah.
It's like, this is the best run rally that I've ever been to. And I think a lot of it does really come down to the staff. They're just fantastic people. And there's just drive. Everybody that's there, I went on the first Rebelle, and this is the 6th Rebelle. And what's cool is that the same people are still on it.
It says a lot.
And when you have a high stress event like this, that's once a year that, people may have, stuff might come up or whatever. The fact that like almost all of that crew is still there, I think just speaks volumes about the leadership of the event and the event itself. People believe in it, and it's cool now to see.
Yeah, we totally do. I mean, we've been so fortunate.
We were the first sponsor.
Yeah, we were fortunate to be the first sponsor. Yeah, the first media.
I'll fight you for it.
No, we were the first media sponsor.
Yeah.
So we were literally both the first sponsors.
Yeah. So it's
cool.
just it's been cool to see this segment, this type of motorsport and competition develop.
Yeah.
Because
it's so great.
Because now you walk in and you're like, oh, that team's good. That team's good. That team's great. Like, you can kind of start to get in it. And we're at that point now where the competitors themselves have evolved, and the competition has evolved.
Sure.
And,
the event has evolved, even like the last 3 years.
And it can go so many ways, it's like, it's been really cool.
Oh, I think it's great. And it sounds like that starting with a great vehicle, you don't really need to do a lot of modifications to the car. It doesn't give you some huge advantage if you have a good driver and a good navigator, or you've invested the time in becoming good drivers and good navigators and collaborating well as a team. That will serve you far better than
spending money on
set of shocks,
navigation training and driver training. I mean,
totally.
8 stages. I'd want some good shocks too, but
well, that'll just help
fatigue
prevent you from
and whatever,
breaking down and that kind
and
of
I think
thing.
30, it's max of a 35-inch tire.
I don't know the answer
I think
to
35s
that.
are the max.
That makes sense.
But
sounds like it really wouldn't benefit you to have much larger than that anyways.
It would not.
No, and you're just going to have more stuck and broken.
Yeah.
But it's cool. The event as of last week was 50% at capacity, 50% sold already.
Wow. For the next year, for 2020,
2022.
Wow.
So,
so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Now, Ashley, how do people find out more about the Rebelle Rally? If someone is interested in participating, how do they go about doing that? And what is typically expected from them? Like, I remember hearing about some training that they do. And so how do people find out more information? And if they're interested in racing, what are some things that they need to think about before they make that decision?
Yeah, I would highly recommend visiting their website, rebellerally.com. All the information is there. They even have packing lists and suggestions for training. I know they run what's called Rebelle U. And so
Cool.
they have various courses. And then if you don't necessarily do Rebelle U, then there are other courses that are listed there that you can take instead. So they have a list of recommended ones. You can also visit them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube.
Oh, so
all the
cool.
usual suspects.
So cool. Matt, what were some of the takeaways for the event? I mean, what did you leave there with the takeaway on?
Tough women.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. It was a lot of adverse conditions this year. And, you know, all of these nights in a tent with little sleep, long days, you know, most of the teams are up at 4, 5 a.m.,
Yep.
you know, and they're not going to bed until 10 because, you know, they get their maps the night before and they're, you know, planning their strategies and things. Just really tough competitors.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it ends with this big celebration.
I had oysters
Yeah.
at Glamis.
Yeah.
It's nice to put a dress on at the end of that, you know. I think you walk in and everybody's like, "Oh, wow." Like you clean up well after they see you like looking
Clean up really well.
full of sand.
Considering you cleaned up in a porta potty.
Yeah.
No showers.
So
True.
it ends in Glamis. So lots of driving in the dunes, and then it kind of wraps up with this gala at the end of it.
Red
that is
carpet.
so awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
That's really fun. Well, you know, thank you both for being there and helping to support such a great event. And Emily and her team, we just really support you. We're grateful that you have the event available. For those that want to find out more information, we'll also put links in the show notes and in the description, so that way you can check that out. We'll also include some footage in the YouTube video that we're recording for the podcast as well. But check it out for sure, rebellerally.com. All right, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next time.